Hello, world. Welcome to the Pocket Gamer podcast with your hosts, me, Brian Baglow, and our icon of IP, our warrior queen of work for hire, Miss Peggy Ann Salz. Hello, Peggy. Always a pleasure. How are you doing?
Always a pleasure. I was on the road. We missed each other a few times, but now we are back. And as always, these meetings, they bring a lot of value, a lot of joy. I get to meet new people. So I came back with guests for us, Brian, and I went to the other extreme. I thought, it's great to talk about UA and Admon and all that stuff, but let's get real. Let's get real. Let's talk about raw and real things in the real world. And someone who has done it, has seen it, and knows what it's like because shift happens, right?
Shift does indeed happen.
We won't go to what 2025 will be, but let's just say, as you always say, Brian, only constant is change. Our guest today is Ryan Filsinger. He is the founder and CEO of Iron Fox Games. And a little bit like you, Brian, when I saw him and met him, I thought of you because, yes, a journey in games spanning 17 years. But which is like right there. You have to say, wow, that's an impressive track record. But it's even better than that because it's been with the iconic IP that we know, from The Simpsons to Star Wars to Marvel. And he has been able to pivot, endure, keep moving forward, and join us today. All of that together, I have to say, that is somebody I want to hear from. And here he is. So good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Peggy.
Welcome on board, Ryan. It's lovely to have you here. And this sounds like a heck of a journey, so I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Yeah, in 2008, the local province here decided to invest in the games industry. Where I grew up here, I'm based in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, which is a small little province of 120,000 people off the east coast of Canada. We're in a time zone most people does not know exists, called the Atlantic time zone. And we are normally known for fishery, tourism, Inner Green Gables, and agriculture. And the government wanted to kind of expand that into the IT market. And in the early 2000s, they started to invest in video games. And I happened to be one of those people that got one of those early jobs. I had the opportunity to be a tester on the first game that was ever on stage with Steve Jobs, which was Super Monkey Ball, and got to see sort of the birth of the iPhone and those early days right out of the gate in the industry. Shortly after that, the company I was working for got acquired by Electronic Arts. We ended up working on The Simpsons Tapped Out for 5.5 years. We tried to do a second title after that, which didn't quite work out. After that happened, I ended up partnering with Kabam and started a satellite studio for them here in Charlottetown with a few of my friends. That's where I had the opportunity to work on Transformers and Marvel and Disney products, which were amazing times. And then in 2022, early 2022, I had an opportunity to sort of fall on my lap, and took that as a chance to go start my own studio. So we started Iron Fox Games back in March of 2022 and been at it for 2.5 years now, through ups and downs. In this market, the line we say is 2022 was a great year to start a company. 2023 was a terrible year to run one. And somehow we're almost now to 2025. And we've been through lots of ups and downs, and somehow still here on the other side of it.
We hear from so many people. It's like 2024. We don't talk about 2024. It's like Fight Club. I think it's been tough all around. Tell us a little bit more about Iron Fox, because that's a heck of a track record. So it would be lovely to hear what Iron Fox is doing that sets it apart from your previous work.
What we thought was, when we started the company, was, okay, well, what do we really know? What are we really good at? We knew how to handle licenses. We had, worked on some of the biggest ones out there in the world. We had ran games for 10 years in live operations, and we had spent 15 years in mobile. So when we started the company, we thought, okay, those are going to be our three pillars. But we quickly found out that with the way the market was going, that a lot of people who might want to partner with live operation studios were holding on to their IP. So instead of going out and investing in new games and then outsourcing their work to other partners, they were going back to their original titles and investing more money because that was proven dollars. And so new games weren't being made, and older games weren't being shipped out to partners quite at the frequency that we had thought. So part of our pivot over the last 18 months has been finding home actually in web gaming. And finding also partnering with some old titles. So one of the thesis that we had thought was you have a situation where early mobile titles are now retro, right? Like they're 10, 12 years old now. And we saw some of the early games like Subway Surfers and Temple Run do really well on the web. And, their Subway Surfers still sits, probably in the top 10 downloads. And we went looking around for games that were built around 2009 to 2012, the ones that we had really worked on early before free to play kind of had taken over and changed the entire market. And in that, we found Mega Jump, which was a game that had almost 100 million downloads between 2012 and 2015. And our good friends at Get Set in Toronto had moved on, and they were working on some VR products. And I went to them and happened to meet them at a Pocket Gamer in Toronto, and had lunch with them and said, are you doing anything with this IP? Like this, we had actually tested it. My co-founder and I had actually tested it back in the early days. And he's like, no, it's just sitting there. We've kind of moved on and found different home in different areas. And I said, would you give us a chance to have it? And he's like, sure. So we ended up working out a deal. And all through that, we were introduced to the folks down at Half Brick, who are amazing people out of Australia. And at the same time, they were in the process of thinking a lot on the same lines. And they have recently launched Half Brick Plus, which is sort of like it's a subscription service, resurrecting and investing in all their original titles, Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride and Dan the Man and kind of everything that they've built over the last 15 years plus. And we happened to find a way to work between the three companies. And back in late September, we relaunched Mega Jump on Half Brick Plus. And now we're in the process of porting it and bringing it to the web as well. So our first game and our first title of trying to resurrect those early games from our early careers is checked. And now we're out looking for our second title. So as you can imagine, though, in that situation, most of those games or IPs from the early days it's a lot of like archaeological work, right? It's okay, who owns the IP? Who is the original dev? Where's the source code? Like, can you license it? Can you not? Maybe somebody already else has taken it. So it's a lot of misses. But our first one out of the gate, we think is a gigantic hit, and it's been doing really well on Half Brick's platform. And we're anticipating what's next for it. So
Means that there's opportunity just if you look at what was working before, find it resurrected. I mean, it's almost like you can go back in top grossing lists or something and, in some data tool, there's lots of them, Sensor Tower, Apptopia, you name it, App Magic, and do some research and find these again.
yeah, we have a list of about 100 of them that we're like slowly making our way through. And some I've reached out and never heard back, right? The original devs don't even answer their email. The website hasn't been updated in, 10 years. Like I said, it's a lot of archaeological work that might not bear as much fruit as you hope, but maybe some of this conversation today will have somebody will be sitting on an IP from 2013 and kind of want to bring it back and reach out to us.
If you're outside the games industry, you tend to assume that games have the same kind of long tail that music and movies, do through DVD and streaming, and it's just not the case. I've been doing this for quite a while, and there are games that I've worked on where I'll be standing up in front of a class of students at a college somewhere and talking about, say, Wild Metal Country or Body Harvest, and people go, "Oh, my dad played that," which A makes me feel really old, but B it's they go, oh, it would be brilliant. Somebody should bring that back, and you're like, yes, they should. Um, and but it's such a strange industry because obviously, the hardware, the firmware, and everything dates so quickly. But you're absolutely right. It must be a little bit more Indiana Jones than your plain vanilla developer ever gets to be in terms of going down and doing the detective work. So, I would love to see your top 100 list because that just sounds fascinating.
Yeah, one of the other things to keep in mind is that the Video Game History Museum, which is based out of Emeryville, California, they did a study, and I forget what up to what year. I think it was 2012, where 87% of all games that have been made up to 2012 are lost to the sands of time, and they weren't even counting the digital revolution, which has happened in the last 10 years, where people aren't buying discs anymore or cartridges. They're not sitting them in their closet or under their TV. And like you said, in the situation where hardware, firmware, old services that games were connected to don't exist anymore. And it was a bit of work for us to take, because the original game was written in original Xcode, and so we had to like completely report the product to Unity. But we were lucky that we had a partner that had amazing historical records of everything they had done and had all the art, and the original team was still together. So it's kind of like we know that the first one was probably going to be the best chance to like get everything because it kind of checked all the boxes we were looking for. And we just happen to be lucky. But this is going to be a problem now for going forward. Is all these games just won't be able to be played anymore, and you can't take an iPhone out of a closet like you can an Atari and plug it into your television and expect anything to work because all those services are gone and the hard maybe you don't have the charger anymore and will it even boot? And so it's a concern for us, and one that we're willing and have been investing our time into. Another thread on that is there is I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called the Strong Museum of Play, which is in Buffalo, New York, and they are working on mobile and digital preservation of games as well. Their ethos is about all play, but they have been spending a lot of significant time in this area, and we've made contact with them and have chatted with them a couple times. They've put a lot of work into it. So
But bringing it to the web makes such a huge amount of sense because obviously, if you're dealing with something I take it it's like Unity but HTML5, that kind of
yeah,
thing,
it
right?
runs in YGL. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of almost making it um, technology agnostic because the browsers are so universal and so sort of multi capable that you can kind of take it out to the world.
Yeah, and that's sort of our current prevailing theory is that where we're spending our time now is while we do consider ourselves, mobile natives, since that's where the last 15 years of our lives have been spent. Um, the web, we believe, is actually catching up really quickly, and I think it's setting itself up for a second renaissance or a third renaissance, depending on how many times you want to count it. But this idea of being able to play on any device at any time, pick up and play your game. What is the one universal piece of software now that's across every smart TV, probably your car? It's a browser, right? And so we're now spending a lot of our time building all our products as web first, and we have some of our own technology we're using, but by and large, too, we're trying to wrestle Unity to make sure it works inside a browser at maximum optimization. And with Unity 6 recent release, we haven't totally dived into it, but it's obvious that they're spending and investing their resources to make this a reality and a more easy and a lot easier for devs.
Very good point, though, as well, is that because that is sort of the next wave. I mean, that's what's behind your discussion with Half Brick Plus. I mean, it is in a way. We'll get to the difficulties in your journey, but the point is finding these opportunities in the middle of all of this. So it's about looking at the IP that we know worked because it has a track record. And then it's about bringing it back to the browser as the platform, because that's something that we will all access. So it's something that indies can do, and indies can do well.
Yeah, and the other part of our operating thesis is that a lot of indies are running towards Steam and PC, PC traditionally and console, and so that market, I think, it's getting saturated every, daily. The amount of Steam games that are being launched is growing, and I don't think it's going to slow down any. The web is easier to distribute, and it has some issues in terms of like the monetization isn't quite there yet. It's not as mature. Most of the revenue comes from ads, but there is a prevailing shift. I believe that our people are going to become more and more comfortable with web transactions, and buying games and through the web, and then you don't have installation and DRM issues as well. So it's um, it's a place that we're spending more time doing, and we're aware too of even there's a company, I don't know if you're familiar with them called Ray Browser, and they are a browser startup company that is building a browser specifically for web gaming, and there we got a chance to meet them at Pocket Gamer Helsinki, and talking to them and seeing their vision is quite interesting. So they're worth a check out as well.
I found so many incredible, interesting little things from people who never saw themselves as game developers, but they made really interesting, beautiful things and put them out for the world. So, could we be coming round? Everything old is new again.
Yeah, that's our current belief right now is that you went through this period where when mobile came up, everybody, a lot of people moved to mobile because that was where the hardware was, that's where the monetization was, and now we're coming back, I think, around the other way, where the power of the devices are making it so more significantly more in complicated and deeper games can be played now, no matter what device you're on and what kind of connection you have. So it's allowing for a second wave of the developers to find their footing in a very low barrier to entry situation.
It's exciting to look into the future and see what's possible, but then also you've had to learn from the past, and there are moments, it's everyone's worst nightmare when you have a great client and then something changes. Either they change their mind or the person you were speaking with changes, and that happens a lot more than you would expect, and in the future even more so. People are changing all the time, their jobs, their responsibilities. Someone's responsible for a project and then not again. And so you have to pivot with them. You've done this, but I'd love to hear from you your advice on how to do that. What do you do when a key revenue source or a key personal source in the company disappears?
Yeah, one of the things that we did, or one of our perspectives when we started Iron Fox, was to always what we called have a bias towards action. Almost anything in a company can be redone or fixed at a later date, but not doing anything is unfixable because you didn't actually produce anything. And so in those situations that you're mentioning, we had a large major client that we were 6 months into working with them. They were an amazing client and things were going very well, but we happened to end up on the wrong side of a spreadsheet one day. Of the people we were dealing with above them made a decision that affected us, and our project got canceled. And in that moment, we had about 48 hours to decide what to do. And so we came together as a group. We saw three sort of paths in front of us. One was, okay, does this experiment of Iron Fox, the bootstrapped company where we're all the friends that have been working together for 10 years end, and we kind of go our separate ways? Two, do we end up having to say goodbye to a couple of our friends and lean the team down to make our runway last a little longer? Or three, do we just take everything that is remaining and try one big more Hail Mary at another product with what we have left over. And we ended up deciding on option B, which was we leaned the team down a little bit. Unfortunately, we had to lay off some friends, but that bought us an extra 3 months or 4 months of time. And luckily, the client was very good at the end of the project and gave us more than they needed to contractually. And finding in partners that are willing to understand the situation and the times was a massive help to us. And in all of that, we were able to buy ourselves about 6 months of time. And one of the things is, I started Iron Fox games a lot later in life than some people. I waited to my 40s until I did it. But that meant I had 15 years of relationships and friendships and people that I could call. And I hit the phones hard. The first thing to do was called all my friends and asked them if they needed an artist or an engineer or some consultancy. And I was able to scrape, a couple small projects together, which kind of bought us more, 4 more weeks, 6 more weeks. And then over the course of like 3 to 4 months, we were able to kind of collect ourselves, find, again, one of the major things that came out of that was the Mega Jump deal. And we were able to right size the team, extend our runway, and then bought us time to sign another project, which we did. And now we're a month into another bigger project, which is coming out next May. And that was about the same size as the project that we lost in March of this year. And so it was a combination of, moving forward, relying on the people that you hired and trusting them, and building a strong network over a long period of time. So you have friends to call, in complete emergencies. Yeah.
That's so important, and we hear this a lot. Is that your network and leaning into that network can help you in times of adversity when you need to find that resilience, you need to dig down and you need to, in some cases, pivot. Um, and we know from speaking to so many of the guests on the show and from our work over the last, however many years, that some studios find it difficult. They have a speciality and they just want to focus on that. So, is that something that you had kind of built in from the outset, or is this something that where you had to essentially at the point of crisis, you had to go, okay, this is what we started to do. This is not going well. How do we take this forward? And was this a team thing, or was this something you had kind of anticipated from the outset?
It was a leadership thing. So my leadership team, we've been together, all of us between started working with each other since 2008 to 2010. And we've been through a lot of adversity over the last 15 years. You can imagine running live games together as a group for 8 to 10 years kind of builds a resiliency inside of you. There's always a fire. There's always something. There's always an emergency, and we knew how to like react and learn together as those. And when those fires were happening, constantly, it kind of strengthens your resolve a lot. And the fact that I was able to do that with the people I've been working with for so long and I consider extremely good friends of mine, I wouldn't have been able to do that without them. So it was a leadership team thing, and we had all decided that we had now finally had gotten to a place where we weren't. It was on our shoulders, and that comes with all the glory and all the difficulty at the same time. So yeah, it was definitely a team decision.
We've heard this a couple times, Brian, because we've also talked to people about, networking and reinventing yourself. We just had a show about reinventing yourself. But you want to be resilient, but at the same time, as you said yourself, you want to build continuity into your client relationships where you can. You don't just want to call them necessarily. You said, you had an issue and you called and you got your projects together, but is there a plan? Is there something you've learned from that experience now that you can recommend some tactics to say, you know, I will always have these people, so to speak, on speed dial because I'm doing this, this, and this for the next time.
The one tactic that helped a lot was um, ensuring that you have mentors in place. There was specifically two people who I had worked with and were my bosses at previous companies that I trusted a lot, and they had sort of been with me through the journey. And so they had been through similar situations, and being able to call them up and go into a room. Luckily, some of them were local here, and go into a whiteboard in a room with a whiteboard and just hash out like, okay, this is what's the situation. Here's the things I know. Here's the things that I don't know. And what decisions are going to get me to the outcome that I want. And having and hearing their advice and their abilities to help me navigate maybe some even local government things that were available to us that I didn't know about, to opening up doors or doing, warm intros of to other people that might have need work that they had heard about. And those mentors or people that have been down the road farther than you is important. And that's one of our ethos as a company, is that we want to invest into the next generation of game developers, and sort of give those hands up and those chances to the people that are coming behind, like someone had done with to me previously. So that's where you can see that on our website. That's like our main ethos of the company. Not so much just to make games, but allow and give space to other people to have and look at that passion. Because right now it's not it hasn't looked good in the last 2 years. So we want to try to give back as much as possible as well.
It's huge because as big as the games industry is, and so many figures are batted around, breaking $200 billion a year, and 3.05 billion players, yeah, out of 8 billion people in the world, and all of these headline figures tend to take over, but it is still quite a small community, um, and even when you go to GDC and there are so many thousands of people, or all the PGC events, you very quickly find your own kind of community, your own network, and being able to again lean into that is so important, because there are people there who have gone through, if not exactly what you're going through, but have hit the same hurdles, the same potholes, encountered the same issues, and being able to learn from that is huge. And we're still a young industry. This is the thing. I talk to people from film, television, even animation all the time, and they're going, well, back in the 19th century, and you're like, guys, 1980s was basically when we more or less started to cobble this together. So it's fantastic, Ryan, and I think you know having the ability to connect with that, rather than keep it to yourself. The wider tech sector is not necessarily known as the most collaborative, the most engaging. And it's one of the things that we hear so often, Peggy, in all of the interviews we do, is that the connections that people make, the people that they meet, I should probably, hashtag PGC Connect right here, but it's so invaluable in terms of helping you through the tough times, getting you the help you need, and finding a way forward. So it's great to hear, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks. Well, one of the things that we've noticed over the last 15 years, or at least especially at Iron Fox, is we have a line that you either have 15 years experience or 15 months, and that the middle range of talent just is not really available to us locally, because of what has happened over the last 10 years. And if you, it's not common for people to make it 4 or 5 years, right? And a lot of people leave the industry. And you're right, it is a small town feel a lot of the time. You go to a show, and we have a saying at Iron Fox. It's like going to the farmers market, and you're seeing all your friends and all your locals, and and it's a great homecoming experience, especially at the bigger ones like GDC. And traditions kind of come out of that. And we actually started Iron Fox at GDC pretty much in 2022. We left our jobs on a Friday. GDC was on a Monday, and it was just myself and Chris Gallant, my co-founder, and we flew down to San Francisco with two people and a dream. And now, and we'll go back every year, and it's the one of my favorite. It's my favorite show of the year to do. So even though it's a very far for travel, well, it's probably even way farther for you guys to go. So
I want to stay with people for a moment because love to hear your thoughts on exactly the importance of people, and to articulate that. Yeah, you get to a point, it's like you get seasoned and you understand that there are some things you're going to do and there are some non-negotiables. And I think that's a core in your story, Ryan. What is the non-negotiable that maybe you can communicate, that our audience can understand, that when they're looking for talent, when they're looking for people, and they're looking for mentors, what are they really looking for, and what shouldn't they put up with? What shouldn't they settle for?
It's kind of interesting. I mean, it's sort of related to what you're talking about. So we started Iron Fox, in 2022. So the COVID hadn't quite completely ended, and most of the team I'd been working with had been working remote for a while. And so one of our non-negotiables at Iron Fox is that we believe that people should be able to live where they want to live and be where they want to be, and that the work is available fully remotely. So we're a fully remote company, and have been and always will be. We've had offices a couple times where they were mostly just hotel desks to give yourself an excuse to get out of the house a little bit. And one of the early things that were a question for us about bringing in new talent was, can you hire new talent, and people fresh out of school, and can you train and invest in them remotely? And so far, either we've been very lucky in who we've hired, because we've hired some amazing talent. All of them have excelled in a remote environment. And one of the things I think attributed to that was a lot of the students that we hired had to do their 3 or 4 years of school in COVID. So they had to learn how to be students and learn how to deliver products and, reports and projects remotely. And then once they were able to graduate, it was a natural transition to how we ran our company. That's one of our main non-negotiables. Another non-negotiable for us is our word is our bond, meaning that whatever we say we're going to do, we do. And that's comes across on all facets of the company in terms of how we treat our staff, how we manage our clients. Is that if we say we're going to deliver on a date, we deliver on it. And there's always stuff that shift happens, right? There's always things that are going to happen, but being honest and true to yourself and to your people that you work with, and the people, it all comes back around in karma. And so, it's our stance to ensure that whatever we say we're going to do, we deliver. And I think that's, helped us through some really difficult times. So.
Why don't we move on to something else that we can celebrate, which is actually your success? You've recently hit 10 million plays, is what you were telling me. Um, yeah, how did you feel when you hit that mark? And how did you tell your team to say, focus on the wins, don't overlook the accomplishments. We just got through a hard time, but hey, let us seize this moment.
Yeah, so we built a game called Up Together. You can check it out at uptogether.io. And it is a kind of a silly little game where you're a vegetable or a fruit or a muffin or a hot dog, and your job is to get up and out of the kitchen. And it was a small little project that we started in one of those downtimes where we were in transition between things. And our partner, Pokey.com, said, hey, we really need a 3D jumping game. Can you make one of those? And we had never built one. And we said, sure, we can. And we went and built it. And it started out as popcorn, and then it evolved into food. And one of the ethoses of the company is, and we had it today, every Friday we get together as a group and we play, and we eat our own dog food. We play our own games. We're as critical on our products as anybody else, and we take time out. And I think over the course of 3 to 4 months that we built it, the level kept getting better. The tools kept improving. The load optimization was improving. And when we launched it, it performed quite well. And it still to this day has about 20 to 25,000 DAU. And it's, been live for a little over 10 months, almost 11 months. And we hit 10 million plays on that last week. And, it was quite a success. If you go into the game, you can see the stats worldwide, something like 6-7 million unique players, hundreds of thousands of deaths, Every country in the world has played it. And one of the most surprising things to us was that it actually has really caught traction in Japan. And we have almost as many Japanese players as we do U.S. and Canadian players, and that's probably the most surprising thing to me was that we're not. I don't know the Asian market is extremely foreign to me and not something I would even know how to crack. But somehow it just ended up resonating with that player base and has done quite well there. So
That's a big thing. That means when you're focusing down on the fun, and everybody we talk to talks about putting the player first, focusing on the fun. And if you're designing something where you just think, actually, this is kind of cool, this is really good fun to play, it's universal. Fun is something that I think every country can get on board with. So that's fantastic. I mean, that's really phenomenal, and congratulations. That's a big thing. But moving forward into the future, what's next for you guys? Do you have a new game in the future, and what have you learned so far that's preparing you or helping you get the next project underway?
yeah, we've got two projects again with Pokey that are coming out fairly soon. One's a lot farther along than the other, and there are two very different games. One is sort of a driving adventure exploration game, and that one is like very close. We're on the kind of the final home stretch of that. The thing we learned um, building that one was taking a lot of inspiration from what you see in current Roblox design. And so one of the things we're learning is that the way that players and kids, especially, are interacting with games is significantly changing. The idea of menus and pop ups and large amounts of text doesn't resonate with a 10 to 14-year-old kid. And so a lot of how we are moving our design to being in-world interactions. So if you say you want to upgrade your car, well, you drive into the garage and it's more of analogous to what you're doing, and there's not necessarily a garage upgrade menu item anymore. It's just a place in the world that you go to do that interaction. And so we're in the process of changing our design around to be more hands free, essentially, where you don't have to move your hand off the driving controls to interact with the project, with the game, and with the world. The second one is a completely left field kind of thing. We're doing a psychological horror adventure game where it's just you're trying to get home and you're stuck in a subway and there's lots of flickering lights and jump scares and creepy music. And it was kind of on a whim that we wanted to see if we could get something out by Halloween. We're not going to quite make Halloween, but the game's coming along quite well. And the team has a lot of fun. When people are screaming and from the jump scares in your own play tests, things are going well. And it's the first time any of us had made a horror game, and so it's really quite not in our wheelhouse or typical style things we do. But we've had a lot of fun, kind of building that out as sort of a challenge to ourselves.
As the father of a 7-year-old who's mildly obsessed with Roblox, um, and a former writer on video games, I don't know if you can see, I started with Grand Theft Auto way back in the day. Uh, the lack of text options and basically taking people through and making it really intuitive is a big thing, and I'm learning so much from basically hating on every Roblox game right now. It's like, what are you doing? What? Um, but it's a really fascinating new way of learning and looking at games from the perspective of new players. It's phenomenal. Um, and you're never going to go wrong with a jump scare. It's where games started. Blowing stuff up and jump scares is our wheelhouse. So, I can't wait to see what you have up your sleeve.
let's look forward out onto the horizon. I mean, you're looking at new platforms, talking about consumer preferences, player preferences, less text, more hands on, emerging technologies. Where should indie studios focus their energy going into next year? Where do you see the big opportunities? What excites you?
This is more of my own personal lens. Is um, I've been quite impressed with, and I kind of trashed on them a little earlier, but with the Steam Deck. Um, it is a device that I probably do almost all my gaming on now. I have a decent PC. I have two consoles. It's more of a analogous to where my life is because I travel quite a bit now, and or just being able to play, console level games in my hands, at night, kind of when I'm winding down or on the plane. And so making sure your game works really well in the handheld format of not just mobile but of a Steam Deck or some of the new ones that are coming out. I think that's going to be the technology and the power of those machines and the battery lives. Hopefully, will continually to get better. So if you're building a game, that's honestly when I go to look for games now, I look to see if they play well on a Steam Deck, and if they don't, I pretty much pass on them because that's where I do almost all my gaming these days. So build for handheld. That's going to be my look to the future comment.
So, Ryan, for all the developers, founders, studio heads listening in, what's the one big piece of advice you'd want to leave them with about building something that endures?
The one of the things is, you said it earlier, shift happens, and being able to understand that change and unpredictability is going to be the norm. It's not a week or 2 weeks go by that something comes out of left field, and you need to be able to be flexible, reinvent yourself, and don't get too hung up on one path forward because by the time that you think something's going to happen or something will be in a certain place, it either won't be or it'll have passed by you. And so being flexible is kind of the best advice I can give. As a company now, we are a mix of work for hire and we work on some of our own products. And I don't believe that percentage will change over time. But my hope is that my plan is to always have a little bit of both. And that way we can, reduce the impact of large events and take advantage of the good ones. So be flexible because a lot can happen very, very quickly.
Ryan, every guest who comes onto the show gets asked a couple of questions that brings it right back to the heart of things, which is the games themselves. So we have two questions we ask all of our visitors. Uh, First of all, what game are you playing right now? What's obsessing you? What's on your Steam Deck? What are you playing when you're on that flight? Second of all, favorite game of all time.
I'll answer the favorite game of all time. It's a game called
Okay,
Tribes.
this rarely happens. So you
Yeah.
go.
It's a game called Star Siege Tribes, and it was a first person shooter, a first person shooter that was very popular in about 2000 to 2002. Ended up having a couple sequels. I think High Res owns the IP now. And I played that all through college. And I always thought I was better than everybody else because games like Doom were stuck on the ground. And the big revelation of this one was that it had a jetpack. And so everything was very vertical, and the Z axis was a huge innovation. And
I remember Duke Nukem 3D basically blew my mind. So I'm with you 100%.
and that was one of the first games I played in multiplayer. So it was team versus team matching, and I was on dial up, and it was a whole thing. And what I'm playing right now is I picked up Sea of Stars, which is a great throwback to the original early RPG games like Chrono Trigger, which is probably my second or third favorite game of all time. And I also picked up the Prince of Persia game. I forget the name of it exactly. The one they actually just announced they disbanded the team. It was the side-scrolling Prince of Persia game. So those are the two games I'm playing right now, and I'll be picking those back up on Tuesday when I'm headed to Montreal. So
Before we bring it to an end, I just have to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been
yeah,
an
that's
absolute
great.
joy.
My pleasure.
It's lovely hearing what you guys are doing. It sounds absolutely wonderful, and we wish you every success in the future.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, because I want it possible that one, people connect with you because maybe they want to connect with you for some advice, but I'm also thinking maybe because they're like-minded and say, yes, Ryan, absolutely, because let's face it, you have grit, but you also have vision. It all comes together with you. So what is the best way to connect with you, Ryan?
You can reach me at ryan@ironfoxgames.com or through LinkedIn, Ryan Filsinger. I'm one of the only ones with that name combination, so I'm not too hard to find.
This show is all about how to do your job better, how to make an amazing game, how to market it, and you have a say. So if you have a story or know someone we need to shine a light on, then we would love to hear from you.
We want to hear from you. We want to reflect the reality of the mobile games market in all its wonderful complexity and strangeness. So if you have any suggestions for us, if you have any feedback for us, you can always get in touch. You can email us at podcast@pocketgamer.biz. You can find us on Twitter @PGBiz, and you can reach out to us through the pocketgamer.biz website. If you're interested in listening to all of our podcasts, you can find them at pocketgamer.biz/podcast, and we would love to hear your thoughts on future shows.
And we've got you covered on all the major platforms, so subscribe to the audio podcast, as Brian said. Look for us on YouTube. If you want to read it, hey, you can do that too, because we have a companion post for you as well on the pocketgamer.biz website.
Tune in again for the next edition of the pocketgamer.biz podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you in the near future.